Tamiflu is an approved drug recommended by the Centers for Disease Control, the World Health Organization, the FDA, and the pharmaceutical companies to be given at the first symptoms of the flu. And it's recommended that all countries even stockpile it. So it sounds good, doesn't it?
It sounds phenomenal. We should all definitely be buying Tamiflu, but let's look at what it does.
There's no data, first of all.
Well, there's not data that's been released by Roche, which is the pharmaceutical company that manufactures it.
And they've been procrastinating for 3 years.
The Cochrane group of doctors, which is a very prestigious group of doctors, it's an independent organization that looks at things like this, has been very frustrated trying to get Roche to release the information.
So how did the FDA and the WHO and the CDC all approve this?
Well, that's a good question. There obviously is some inside ties here that have a lot to do with, again, conflicts of interest and the good old boys club, and that's why these things actually come to be the way they are.
And if the data was so good, why wouldn't they just release it?
Exactly. So what does that tell you? I mean, it's pretty straightforward that if they won't release the data, there's something wrong with it. And they don't want to get into a scuttlebutt with a group of people that come from a very prestigious organization that doesn't seem to have conflicts of interest.
Now, you saw an ad for this on TV the other day, didn't you?
Yeah, that's, it's amazing at how these ads come out and make it sound like you really need this. They say, if you have the flu, make sure you call your doctor and make sure that you can get Tamiflu because it will make the illness a lot less significant. Well,
it's
how
supposed
much
to
less?
shorten it for a half a day to a day.
Yeah, no, there's
but
not
guess
much.
what? There might be some pretty significant side effects.
Oh, for sure. Plus, where's the data that shows that it prevents pneumonia or that it doesn't have so much of a mortality rate to it? That data isn't clear, and I think that's why Roche is withholding the information.
Well, it sounds pretty suspicious. And then, I was thinking about some of the side effects. Like, the first 3 side effects are nausea, diarrhea, and vomiting. Well,
well, that's
like,
a bad
that
start.
sounds worse than the flu.
Exactly.
I think I might rather have the flu.
Well, exactly.
Than have that. And then it can cause hepatitis. Well, there's vaccines that are given to try to prevent hepatitis.
Well, hepatitis is a chemical hepatitis. It's not infectious hepatitis.
Well, whatever.
So,
I don't want anything
you don't want
hurting
either
my
one of
liver.
them. I'm with you. And it can cause anaphylactic reactions. It can cause colitis that's bleeding and a lot of neurological symptoms, including hallucinations and suicides.
And suicide's not a little thing. I mean, many times we hear
Yeah.
of suicide and it's a surprise.
Well,
you think, well,
it's a
that
shock.
person doesn't seem like they were that depressed or they didn't have that symptom before.
A few years ago, when the swine flu was really starting to come out, there was a huge epidemic of suicides in Japan where people tend to use these drugs more than a lot of other countries do. So we've got a real issue here that has to do with, can we trust the pharmaceutical industry or the CDC or the FDA or the World Health Organization as far as that goes when they make proclamations like this? And the answer is obviously we can't.
And Cochrane did find some discrepancies in effects and action of the Tamiflu. So this is one of the reasons why they want to get the rest of this data.
Exactly. So until we get the data, I would say, why take something that has minimum effect? I mean, you would think, and there's a general consensus amongst doctors because they believe these proclamations made by these organizations. They believe the proclamations that say, if you've got a patient who's at a particular risk for developing pneumonia or getting particularly sick, you should add Tamiflu to it. Well, maybe so for people who are in the hospital. But for people that are out of the hospital and just have a cold-like illness, you don't even know that it's influenza. In fact, most of the cases of what were called swine flu back in 2009 and 2010 weren't swine flu at all. They were something else. In fact, they weren't even influenza. They were an unusual combination of lots of common viruses that cause colds.
Well, this is where the Tamiflu fits right in with the flu deception.
Oh, the infection deception that I wrote about that was published in the Townsend Letter for Doctors and Doctors and Patients talks about that. It's about a 15-page article. It's well referenced, and if you'd like to,
in the infection deception.
Yeah, go to drsaputo.com and put that there. Enter it in the search box, and you see all this stuff come up that talks about the terrible deceptive practices that these organizations that sound holier than thou aren't.
Yeah, and you have to be careful of all these ads that you see and really listen with a fine-tooth comb. You can listen with a comb, but
just keep in mind that the pharmaceutical industry is there to make a profit. It's return on investment that matters. It's not whether or not something works. It's convenient if it does, but if it doesn't, let's sell it anyway, right?